Hey guys, Zack here, and this is my review of Danny Phantom. Okay, so this episode, the $1 Million Ghost is, well, essentially the premise is Vlad kind of breaks his ghost portal and needs to steal Jack's. So, that winds up being the main plot. But, there's some interesting stuff in here. And there's a lot of really fun parodies in here. So I kind of like this episode. But, in any case, this episode opens up with Vlad in the ghost zone looking for something he calls the skeleton key, which, he claims can open any door, enable him to travel to any world, and unleash any prisoner. Which he explains, we don't know. We don't fully learn what he's planning to use the skeleton for at first. But before he can actually use it, before he can actually take it, he's confronted by a ghost name that he just refers to as the Behemoth, which is this massive ghost that's just guarding the skeleton key. But he claims that that's all that if all that is in between them and between him and the skeleton key, then he doesn't feel like he's going to have to worry all that much. And sure enough, the Behemoth puts up a bit of a fight, but with his many decades of experience, Vlad is able to equally give it a pretty substantial fight, as it's unable to really touch him, and for the most part is he's pretty powerful, but and eventually Vlad is able to overpower it by summoning his clones, and then proceeds to go after the skeleton key while it's distracted. But the monster anticipates this, and the Brenda proceeds to knock him back through his ghost portal, and as well as all of his clones. And Vlad, of course, gets annoyed and declares that if the Behemoth wants a fight, then he's surely gonna get one. But it's at this point where an alarm goes off, and the Behemoth briefly pokes its head through the portal, but after hearing the alarm go off, it then proceeds to put its head back through. At which point we find out why there's an alarm going off. As it turns out, there's a device that is standard on all ghost portals called the ectofiltrator, which needs to be cleaned. As we find out in this episode, needs to be cleaned out regularly, or the portal explodes. Case in point, Vlad forgot, and all he can really do is turn himself invisible as his castle mansion in Wisconsin blows up. And of course, realizing that he proceeds to remark that he can always buy another, but admits that he's going to need to find a new ghost portal, and quickly. At which point he searches through the rubble of his house and eventually discovers a picture of him with, obviously, pushing Jack away from his family during their college reunion, and realizing that he can use it, that he has a solution. He decides that the best way is to steal Jack's portal. Meanwhile, Danny, it's revealed that Jazz drove Danny to school and is highly appreciative of the fact that she drove him to school, pointing out that sometimes the bus can be a hassle, something that he usually uses his ghost powers to avoid, as we saw in a previous episode. But it's at this point where an alarm suddenly goes off, which and of course we find out it's a ghost alert, which Danny remarks is new, and Jazz immediately panics and tells Danny to hide, even though Danny doesn't fully understand why he would need to hide. And eventually we find out what it is. And according to Sam and Tucker, they're having ghost drills after Walker came in and possessed a lot of people. And sure enough, what we wind up seeing is essentially Principal Lancer in a weird mask. That's essentially what it is. He's wandering through the halls, pretending to be a ghost and being like, "Boo! Get away from me! I'm scary!" Generic ghost things. And of course, pointing out that there doesn't seem like there's going to be any real problem. That winds up being completely proven false when Jack suddenly barges in with a series of ghost hunting gadgets, and declares to the ghost that it won't get away from him. And obviously the ghost is Lancer. So, and Danny tries to dissuade him from attacking Lancer, pointing out that it's just, as he puts it, an overweight teacher in a mask. But of course, Jack doesn't listen and then proceeds to use the Fenton peeler to completely strip Lancer down to his underwear, which it embarrasses Lancer very thoroughly in front of every single one of his students. And of course, because of that, Lancer is extremely furious with Jack, but also points out that since he can't give Jack detention, he will decide to give somebody named Fenton detention and stay back behind after school. And it's at this point where both Jack and Jazz proceed to make themselves scarce, and Danny winds up getting detention for something his father did. And of course later after at the house, Jazz does tell Jack that he should really go back to the school and apologize, pointing out that obviously he got Danny into a lot of trouble. But Jack of course points out that Danny that he's not really, that he's a little bit less concerned about Danny, pointing out that obviously Danny that he was planning to give Danny a stern talking to anyway, because as we find out, the lab is a mess, and Jack has been telling Danny for a long time now that he needs to clean up a lot of the mess that's just around the lab, because, you know, Danny has chores. He hasn't been doing his chores. And case enough, we find out there's beakers everywhere. There's ghost slime on the walls that Danny was supposed to clean up. And also the ecto filter is close to filling up, and they do remark that Danny was supposed to change that. And But of course, at this point where Danny comes downstairs, having only heard like the latter half of the conversation, and points out that he is going to be that he really doesn't have time to do chores because, you know, Lancer just gave him a bunch of schoolwork, and he's lucky he's going to get through all of it. But a case shortly after any of this, we then proceed to hear a news broadcast on the television in the basement. And what we find out is that apparently a very rich benefactor, who goes nameless but is heavily implied to be Vlad, a rich benefactor declares that they have a plan to, you know, hunt they're going to offer up a $1 million bounty on Danny Phantom, which of course remarks that he's hired the best that they've hired the best ghost hunters in the world to deal with it. And of course this causes, and of course when Jack isn't included with this, and there's a really funny gag where Maddie and the rest of the family then proceeds to count down to Jack's explosion when he realizes he wasn't hired. He immediately declares that nobody's going to upstage Jack Fenton, and immediately grabs several of his ghost weapons to immediately go off and compete and get and prove his worth as a ghost hunter. And of course to this point where we then start to meet some of these ghost hunters, and of course they meet everybody. Danny meets with Sam and Tucker at the Nasty Burger, and Sam asks Danny if he's at all worried about the fact that he's going to be hunted by a series of experienced ghost hunters. But Danny remarks that he isn't particularly worried because obviously he points out that they're the best well-known ghost hunters, and they're not the best. But also points out that as long as he doesn't turn into his ghost mode around them, he'll be fine. So but in any case, at this point when we meet them, and we do find out who some of the ghost hunters actually are. First and foremost, we meet the Groovy Gang and Scaredy Cat, who are an obvious parody of Scooby-Doo, and they are obviously a group of hunters. But then we also meet the Guys in White, who are a parody of the Men in Black and are from the government. They are a government task force that dedicates itself to hunting ghosts, and they take everything way too seriously. And then finally, we have the Extreme Ghost Breakers, which are a parody of the Extreme Ghostbusters from the Ghostbusters franchise. So, you know, overall a pretty funny group that are very obvious parodies of other, you know, quote unquote ghost hunting groups. Obviously, the Men in Black don't really apply because they're designed to protect aliens and to defeat the evil ones rather than, you know, hunting ghosts. But you know, it works for the parody, so I don't really care. But in any case, it's at this point where Jack proceeds to barge in and tries to introduce himself to the rest of the group. He shows up in his Fenton RV obviously everybody is annoyed at him because obviously he's obviously not a very competent ghost hunter. That's been established in previous episodes, but there's a big twist in there at the end. And if you saw his previous one of the, and if you saw one of my previous reviews of these, you know what the twist is already. But in any case, Tucker points out that this is obviously a gold mine for him, because he then proceeds to put on a sheet that says Booyah Tours on it, and declares that it'll be the perfect opportunity to go on a ghost hunting tour, which of course he can take everybody to see the sites and figure out all the different places where ghosts are located. Before he can do that, he winds up getting blasted by Jack, who of course winds up gooping Tucker in the ghost outfit, and when they finally realize that it's just a human and not actually a ghost, they all kind of mock Jack for his foolishness, but even though they all seemingly made the same exact mistake. But and of course, Sam just pointed out to Tucker that maybe dressing up as a ghost in a parking lot full of ghost hunters wasn't the best idea. But in any case, Vlad, with the vulture ghosts, then proceed to look over the scene, and does point out that obviously that they do ask Vlad why he can't just steal the ghost portal and why he needs to specifically make Jack look like an idiot. But of course, Vlad points out that obviously he gets to do two birds with one stone. He proceeds to point out that obviously if he makes Jack look like an idiot, obviously he can both make Jack look like an idiot and also steal his ghost portal, because as he points out, stealing the ghost portal is going to take time. So in the meantime, he figured he could humiliate Jack. With that, he then proceeds to send his vulture ghosts, to go and mess with the ghost hunters a little bit. And of course, Jack is immediately the first one to spring into action. We're pulling out the Fenton ghost fisher and wrapping it around one of the ghost's tails. But all that really winds up doing is causing him to ram face first into the Nasty Burger order sign, and it lands on top of him, with the Nasty Burger guy at the drive-thru window just remarking that he's seemingly the worst ghost hunter ever, and everybody proceeds to start laughing at him. But of course, Tucker and Sam do ask Danny if he's going to do something and help his father out. But of course, Danny points out that it's just a bunch of harmless laughter, and points out that it's probably not going to amount to anything, and also proceeds to point out that nobody's in any real danger, so it's probably fine. At which point, the other two vulture ghosts proceed to scoop up Sam and Tucker, and he realizing he has to blow his cover to save them, he proceeds to run behind the Nasty Burger and transforms, and proceeds to chase after the ghosts. But before he can actually save Sam and Tucker, who later get dumped inside a dumpster by the vulture ghosts, because they're not that whole part wasn't important. It was just to lure Danny out. But Danny is suddenly attacked by Vlad. And Vlad, of course, Danny insists to know what Vlad is doing there, but of course, Vlad sarcastically remarks that, there's $1 million bounty. Jack is embarrassed. Why would Danny think he was there? But of course, Danny proceeds to kind of mock him, pointing out that maybe he has something better to do, like maybe get home to his family. But then and maybe could return to the love of his life. But then proceeds to mock Vlad even further, pointing out that wait, he doesn't have any of those because his dad's buried the love of his life, which of course causes Vlad to immediately attack him, and Danny in the process starts to pass out and tries to transform back into his human form, but Vlad uses his ghost powers to stop him, remarking that obviously he can't have Danny doing that, because obviously while he is trying to humiliate Jack, Danny is ultimately the guest of honor, and they can't have him turning back into his ghost form without actually being hunted by any ghost hunters. And with that, he then proceeds to throw Danny at the feet of all the ghost hunters, who immediately pull out their weapons and are eager to hunt the $1 million ghost. But while Sam and Tucker recover from being dumped in the dumpster, pointing out that it smells just, but with Tucker pointing out that it smells just as bad coming out as it does going in. But AK, but they do see that Danny is in danger, and immediately realize that they need to do something. But and of course, Danny then proceeds to realize all the ghost hunters are about to kill him, and remarks that he liked it better than when they were laughing. But in any case, it's at this point where Jack barges in, and but it's in any case where Danny figures out how the best way to get out of the situation, which is to scare Scaredy Cat, and gets him to cling onto somebody and distract them, and just causes overall a panic. And this, of course, enables Danny to get away. But then the ghost hunter from the Groovy gang does point out that maybe they should do something and stop the ghost from escaping before Jack does something stupid. And of course, Jack immediately insists to know where the ghost is, which of course was what the guy was talking about. But of course, Danny just proceeds to successfully escape, and everybody continues to mock Vlad, pointing out that obviously he is the worst ghost. That he obviously proceeds to mock Jack, pointing out that he is indeed the worst ghost hunter ever. And Jack, dejected, goes home. Meanwhile, Danny still hasn't done any of his chores. He's poking at the extra filtrator to see if he can maybe get a bit more mileage out of it before he actually has to clean it out. But in case Sam and Tucker point out if they think his dad will be okay. But Danny, of course, then proceeds to point out that obviously he feels a little bit bad about what happened, pointing out that Jack was very thoroughly embarrassed, and admits that it was very embarrassing what happened, and he really wishes what hadn't happened, and he does wish that Jack was a bit more of a competent ghost hunter, so it didn't happen as often. But of course, what we find out is that in the process of Danny saying that, Jack comes down and accidentally hears his son saying a bunch of things about that, a bunch of negative things about him, and Danny, realizing too late that his father is behind him, does turn around. But of course, Jack points out that Danny is unfortunately right, and he does realize that he may not be cut out for the ghost hunting business after all. So he decides to kind of go upstairs and sulk and kind of decides to swear off ghosts. Which of course Sam asks Danny if there's maybe something that Danny can do to help him. And maybe by reinvigorating his desire to hunt ghosts by sending a ghost for him to hunt. And Danny, realizing that he has a bounty on his head, does decide that the best way to get Danny to do exactly what he wants, get Jack to kind of reinvigorate himself, does decide to transform into his ghost mode. And meanwhile, Jack is remarking and decides to go into the kitchen to, make Jack think that has a chance of hunting a ghost. Meanwhile, Jack, ironically enough, does point out that he doesn't feel like he's cut out to be a ghost hunter, and that maybe all the other ghost hunters were right, and does remark that he probably wouldn't be able to catch a ghost even if it was right in front of him. And of course, Danny appears right in front of him, waving his arms, saying like, "I'm a ghost. I want to be caught. Hello." But quickly discovers that Jack is not in the mood, and Jack asks Danny if he's come to ask Danny as his ghost form to come if he came to mock him even further. But Danny then proceeds to go on this speech about how he came to turn himself into Jack, and does use Jack's first name, which of course he admits that he's never done before, and it sounds cool, but does refer to Jack by his first name and tells him that he wants Jack Fenton specifically to hunt him, because he's afraid of him. But of course, Jack points out that he's not really in the mood and is remarking that maybe he should retire. But of course, Danny then tells him that he shouldn't. At which point, Maddie points in that he really definitely shouldn't. At which point, she barges in with the Fenton weasel and sucks Danny inside of it, with Danny remarking that really could have gone better. But in any case, she then proceeds to hand the Fenton weasel to Jack and tells him that he caught a ghost, with Jack perking up when he realizes that, he did catch a ghost, even though it wasn't actually him, but the semantics. But she then proceeds to tell Danny to tell him to drop Danny off at where he was supposed to turn him in for the bounty. said, you know, he can restore his good faith, his good name as a ghost hunter. And Jack immediately decides to do it, pointing out that he hasn't a moment to lose, and then proceeds to kind of drag the Fenton, Fenton weasel into what is revealed to be an empty alley with nothing in it. Which, of course, Danny quickly figures out that it's a trap and tries to explain to Jack that it's a trap, but Jack wonders why he should listen to him in the first place, because obviously he's a ghost. But it's at this point where Jack winds up being caught in a cage, and Danny asks if that answers his question. But in case it's at this point where Vlad appears and reveals his and Jack immediately recognizes him as the ghost who inspirited him at Vlad's place, and does insist to know what he's doing there and what he plans to do with him. And the ghost and of course Vlad proceeds to tell him that, you know, that is a very big question, but he's merely there to keep Jack out of the way so that he can steal his ghost portal. Which of course Danny remarks that Vlad already has a ghost portal, much to Jack's surprise. But Vlad, of course, remarks that yes, he is planning to steal the ghost portal because, unfortunately, he forgot to change out the ectofiltrator, and does point out that he needs to go get that he needs a new one because of that. So with that, he then mocks Jack one final time before leaving. But in any case, Jack does proceed to sit down and remark that maybe that he was right, pointing out that he did walk into an obvious trap, and does realize that he's obviously he obviously doesn't feel like he's cut out for the ghost hunting thing. But of course, Danny proceeds to tell him that that's not true, and that he's a pretty great ghost hunter, and that he needs to get up so he can go save his family. But of course, he then proceeds to remark that they're probably not in any danger, because obviously the ectofiltrator, his son should have changed the ectofiltrator. But it's at this point where Danny then proceeds to, you know, as his ghost form, then proceeds to asks Jack if Danny has done any of the other chores that he's asked him to do. And after realizing that no, he hasn't done any of them, quickly realizes that their ghost portal is going to blow, and he of course then proceeds to let Danny out of the Fenton weasel, telling him that he'll let him go if he volunteers to help him save his family. And of course, Danny then proceeds to point out the obvious problem that, you know, Jack already let him go, but does declare that he will help, once again referring to him by his first name, but does declare that Jack Fenton will in fact help Jack Fenton save his family, because that's what's important. And it's at this point where he scoops up Jack, using his intangibility to enable him to fly, which of course Jack just remarks makes his stomach feel weird before they fly off. Meanwhile, we find out that in an effort to keep the other ghost hunters off of Danny's trail, so that they can you know, keep Vlad safe, keep them away from Danny while he talks to his father, does decide to pull out their Booyah Tours idea, but also admits that they probably shouldn't have used a bicycle to pedal them around. They point out that was kind of a mistake. But in any case, Jazz and Maddie. Jazz is currently around the house when she discovers that nobody's home, and obviously the Vulture Ghosts by this point are starting to dismantle the ghost portal, with Vlad kind of riding them a little bit, pointing out that they could be moving a little faster. But one of them just remarks that they're over 2,000 years old, and they should be very lucky that they're moving at all. In any case, Jazz immediately comes home looking for her family. At which point, Maddie grabs her and tells her that they need to keep quiet because there's ghosts about. And it's this point where they move to the weapons vault to, you know, look for some weapons to fight the ghosts. But quickly discover, once they do successfully get there, but Maddie quickly discovers that Jack has changed the password, which, of course, very much remarks that she can't get in. At which point, one of the Vulture Ghosts grabs them and says they can't get out either, and phases them through the door, and now they're stuck in the weapons vault, unable to get out. But of course, Jazz does point out that she feels like they could get out, because even Jack isn't stupid enough to forget to install a release handle on the inside of a weapons vault. But then what they do discover that yes, is that stupid, because what they find instead of a handle is a note from Jack saying that he needs to remind Danny to install the installing handle on the inside, which of course they realize that they're now stuck in there. But in any case, they're on their way to. In any case, as they're on their way, it's at this point where the whole Booyah tours doesn't wind kind of working out, because while they're trying to keep the other ghost hunters distracted, they accidentally find out that Danny has flown overhead of all of them, and immediately springing into action. The Groovy Gang, Guys in White, and Extreme Ghost Breakers all immediately spring into action to try and fight Danny, and successfully blast him out of the air. And of course, Jack is unfortunately dropped in the process, but he does scoop up Danny, and Jack of course decides to points out that he's going to help him fend off his fellow ghost hunters, because obviously Danny has been very helpful to him thus far, and he kind of needs him to see it through. But Danny proceeds to tell him that he can handle the other ghost hunters, and that Jack should just go and deal with it. But Jack of course goes home to go and face Vlad and the Vulture Ghosts, and Danny very successfully deals with the other ghost hunters by just scaring Scaredy Cat and causing him to run into all of them and bowl them over. And then Danny just dumps them into a vault and dumps them into the Nasty Burger dumpster, and then throws a dog into the dumpster for good measure, so that Scaredy Cat chases after it. But in case satisfied that he's done a job well done, he then proceeds to fly home to help Jack deal with Vlad. And Vlad, of course, is very much trying to dismantle the ghost portal, when suddenly Jack comes downstairs and tells Vlad to get away from his ghost portal. But of course, Vlad isn't particularly threatened by Jack, and proceeds to just use his ghost race to just blast him into a table where, conveniently, the Fenton ghost gloves happen to be lying on. And Jack proceeds, and of course he points out that he could have just stayed in. That Vlad just points out that Jack could have just stayed in his trap and not moved. But does tell him that now the gloves all have to come off. But of course Jack points out but in any case, Jack does return to sentiment, pointing out that though ironically he is now wearing gloves, he does point out that when it comes to protecting his family, he's also willing to take the gloves off. Metaphorically, of course. He's wearing the ghost gloves to fight. But in any case, Vlad then proceeds to engage, and Danny initially thinks that he needs to help with Vlad. But then when we discover, well, not rediscover, because it was heavily implied in the last previous time this has happened, but what Danny specifically discovers is that when his family's in danger, Jack's competency as a ghost hunter immediately skyrockets up to 11. So, case in point, Vlad pretty much serves no chance of actually facing off against Jack, which he's confused about, because he points out that Jack is supposed to be incompetent. But Jack merely responds that when his family is in danger, nothing is going to get in between him and his family. So, of course, he then proceeds to just immediately proceeds to knock Vlad around a whole bunch with the ghost gloves, while Danny just decides to turn back into his human form and remarks that, she really shouldn't have to worry about Vlad anymore, so he decides to take the opportunity to do his chores. And of course, what we find out is that obviously Jack just takes care of all Danny's chores for him by virtue of fighting in the lab where Danny was supposed to clean up. So, with Danny remarking that he's only has to worry about the old ectofiltrator. So he proceeds to go over to it and discovers that it has about 30 seconds before it's about to blow. So Danny proceeds to unplug the vial, but then panically wonders where the new vial is. So Jack proceeds to hand him the new vial while he takes care of the old one, and and then proceeds to blow the old vial right into Vlad's face to blind him. And Vlad doesn't understand how Jack was able to best him, pointing out that he's supposed to be an idiot. But Jack merely responds that he is, but also responds that he was the idiot who beat him. At which point he throws Vlad into the ghost portal, with Vlad just being stuck in the ghost zone for the next episode. But in any case, Danny is very happy with his father, pointing out that was the most cool thing he's ever seen his dad do. But then Jack does return to sentiment, but then also remarks if Danny knows does in fact know is in fact forgetting anything. And of course, we find out in getting swept up in the excitement, he forgot to put the new valve inside the ectofiltrator, and now it's about to blow. And sure enough, the episode ends with revealing that end part was kind of a simulation. As we found out, technically speaking, all of the events of the episode still happened, but the building did not in fact blow up. It was just a simulation to remind Danny of why it's important to change the ectofiltrator, because if he doesn't, their house will blow up. But he does, of course. Danny then proceeds to point out that from now on, he is in fact going to start doing his chores a little bit more. While, of course, Jack remarks that this time he's not gonna be forgetful and keep pawning his chores off on Danny. At which point they walk past the ghost vault, and the ghost weapons vault, and where we find out is that Maddie and Jazz are still very much stuck inside, with Jazz also trying out the fact that trying out calling Jack by his first name, which she does again remark sounds cool. But and I'm sure, and eventually they will get out because we see them in the very next episode. But that's how the episode ends, with Jack accidentally locking his wife and daughter in the ghost vault and not realizing they're stuck inside there. But yeah, overall this is a fun episode because obviously the entire thing was that Jack was established to be an incompetent ghost hunter. That was the entire premise of the episode. But as it turns out, that's circumstantial, because he's only an incompetent ghost hunter when his family isn't in danger. Once his family is in danger, he immediately becomes competent enough to face off against pretty much even the worst threats. Case in point, Vlad's the show's main antagonist, and he beats him up pretty much single-handedly, which is awesome. But in any case, yeah, it's a very fun episode. I do like the episode, but yeah, that's gonna do it for today's review. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, be sure to follow me on Twitter in the description below. Be sure to check out my big Discord. Link is down in the description. Please go check that out, especially since we are going to be doing a movie review a movie watch along at the end of the month. During Halloween weekend. So please go do that. Please go check that out so you can be a part of that. And also, be sure to go and check out my Twitch. I stream Saturdays and Sundays, and I've been playing horror games to supplement my reviews of Danny Phantom. So please go check those out. And also, be sure to go and check out my Twitch. Link is also down in the description. Please go. Well, yeah, go check out my Twitch again. I guess just go do that. Bears repeating. Go check it out. Link is down in the description, because there's a lot of you over here, and some of you do not follow me over there. I would appreciate it if you were to fix that a little bit. And also, finally, if you want to see more content from me, then be sure to check out the videos. Check out the playlist link on the end screen. That force of habit. I keep saying videos, but it's playlist. But yeah, top playlist is Megas Month, which was the recent one I did where I reviewed it for my birthday. That was a big one that I was excited for. Whereas the bottom one is Courage Month, which was my previous Halloween celebration, and one of the first one I did. So please go check that out. And finally, if you want to support me, go check out Patreon. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. And until next time, I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace!